So it's pretty cool. I live in basically an Escher painting or drawing. It's yeah, it's good for creativity. So so karma. Keeping things, using the most basic metaphor is actually the most effective way of communicating and relating ideas. So I know that the ego wants complexity because it wants movement, and that's what the topic of today is basically karma and movement. So karma in its most basic form or definition is movement. And the stillness is the absolute. So I've been doing some research on psychedelic trips, and I've done salvia probably maybe a dozen times, and it's fascinating. So so as this game progresses and as self-awareness dawns and gets deeper, it appears as though more movement occurs. So as self-awareness increases, so does movement. So a rock is aware basically of gravity. That's all you could say that the level of awareness of a rock is of gravity, and that's it. So it moves not of its own volition, right? It moves just in accordance with the law of gravity. But as consciousness comes through these objects, as consciousness arises and self-awareness increases, there is a movement against gravity, isn't there? So plants are moving against gravity. Those trees that I'm looking at outside are moving against gravity, right? So its movement is up. And with animals, there's a higher degree of self-awareness, and there's more movement, isn't there? They've popped off of the ground, and now they can move more freely. And fast forward to human consciousness, and look at how much we're moving. We're like little ants on an anthill that's been disturbed. We're just going crazy all over the place, right? And also, we, in a way, have conquered gravity, or at least the movement is away from gravity. So we've actually moved, if you want, we've vibrated so quickly on the surface of the planet, if you wish, that we've popped up. We've popped off of the planet and out of gravity's pull. So why all this movement, and where are we trying to go? Why are we leaving this perfectly, well, it used to be, right? Perfectly livable planet. Why are we trying to leave it? The why, again, the why is the most important. So why is all this movement? So one way to look at it is that we're trying to escape this realm. Look at all. So basically what I'm saying is that the trees are trying to escape this realm. The animals are trying to escape this realm. They're doing it in the wrong way, but all of this movement, and the same can be said with, look at all of the things that humans do to try to escape this realm. Literally, physically trying to escape it in a spaceship, right? Watching a movie. Everything that goes on in the screen, our focus is away from the 3D realm, and we're trying to escape this experience. We're not fully here, we're trying to escape, right? Watching a movie, playing a video game is a temporary reprieve from this realm. And psychedelics. Psychedelics are obviously another way of trying to escape this realm. Why are we trying to escape this realm? It's because that's the purpose of the game. The purpose of the game is to find conclusion of the game. So what's interesting about these trips, these psychedelic, salvia, DMT, all of these different psychedelics, is that they call it ego death. It's really just a passing out, right? It's not death, because if it was death, you'd be enlightened. So it's not an ego death, because you just keep popping back into life. The roots are not taken out. You haven't done it naturally, right? You've done it artificially, so then it always comes back. So if you just get to this state that I'm about to describe via psychedelics, well, that's not going to last. It's showing you, it's opening the door, but you keep getting sucked back out the door because you're not ready, or whatever. You haven't taken the right path. So there is a state where, and a near-death experience. This is really interesting because I just listened to a near-death experience where it's the same. It's the same as the psychedelic experience, is that you get to the absolute. You are in the death state, and the way they describe it is that it's just you, right? It's complete emptiness, just nothingness, and I'm alone, and it's terrifying. But what's fascinating is they are describing I was God. They say I was God, and it was terrifying. Well, this is because they haven't gotten there via the right natural path. And so the irony of it is that they realize that they're God, and yet they find that to be a hell realm, because they're looking at it from the perspective of the ego. And what my teaching is trying to show people and get people to is the realization that that state is enlightenment. It is moksha, it is nirvana, but because it's experienced from and described from the state of the ego, well, the ego obviously is going to tell you that that's hell, and I want back. So many of these people, they get there and they realize they're God, and then they say, well, this is terrifying, I want back, I want back, I want back. So what happens? Well, you come back, and that's samsara. Oh, so it's the same state, heaven and hell, in the death state, is the same state viewed from a different perspective. So how do you change that perspective from, oh my goodness, I'm all alone, this is terrifying, I'm alone forever, and it's loneliness, right? It's terror and it's loneliness. But that same experience can also be described from the other perspective as being self-fulfilling, self-sustaining, peaceful, absolute contentment. It's the exact same state, but if you're not prepared for it, and if the ego hasn't actually died, just passed out and come back and passed out and come back, it's like choking yourself out, passing out, and then coming back all the time. Well, you're not killing the ego, you're just making yourself pass out. It's an ego pass out. So, again, the simplest metaphor is the most efficient and effective. So, instead of movement to try to get up, so what's happening is that, another metaphor is that human consciousness understands, it has this intuition that it is just a character, and this is the salvia experiences were like this, is that they're literally experiencing this realm, this three-dimensional realm, as a two-dimensional film, as a two-dimensional experience, and you're just a character on one of these frames of the film. So the laws of physics says that you can't escape this physical realm by going faster than the speed of light, because that's the rules. Those are the rules of the game here, is that it's like a character on a film trying to, or a video game character trying to keep its pixelated form and leap out of the screen into this three-dimensional realm. Well, of course you can't do that. It's impossible, right? But if you think that you are the character, then you don't have a frame of reference otherwise. So you think that, oh well, I can just jump out of this film, the frame of this film, and into this three-dimensional realm. But you can't, right? So again, it's stillness. The way out is stillness. So rather than a moving or a doing, it's a non-moving, it's a non-doing. So there's no movement of mind. And if you can't get to this level of perfect stillness and happiness and self-fulfillment and self-sustaining state in your waking state, then in the death state, that your divinity will feel and appear and be experienced as terror and hell. And if you engage in this practice while you're in the waking state, then when this occurs and you're in the death state, but now it's going to be the extinction state. So it's far a level of magnitude more important and deeper, if you will, state of the extinction state is rather than the death state. I can barely speak. I'm not good at speaking, but I'm trying to get this through to you that it's simply stillness. The cure to all of this suffering is stillness. Just stop. Just stop. And when you realize the bliss and contentment, absolute happiness, absolute in that it is not relative or dependent upon any circumstances. It's just you. Yes, in the death state, it's just you. But this is also just you. It's awareness with content, and the extinction state will be awareness without content. But you are the awareness. So this is the only thing that matters, because the reality is that state. The reality is the absolute. All of this arises from that. So the goal of basically all of humanity is to keep the movement going, to build up the ego and keep the Ponzi going, basically, is just more movement relative to itself. The Ponzi, so you need a base of that is unmoving and unchanging, do you not, right? So the same thing is happening with the financial world, with the fiat currency system. It's because the source, the base, was gold and silver, which is unchanging and basically, right? Unchanging, unmoving. So again, it's a fractal of what is actually occurring within your consciousness all the time. The entire financial system is a fractal of your direct experience. Isn't that amazing? And that's why it's collapsing, is because it moved away from the source, the base of the system being stillness and unchanging. So, the purpose of this life is to realize all of this, and a life that is spiritually based and spiritually motivated correctly, to play the game correctly. One who is engaged in this must do the opposite of what everyone else is doing. So that means doing everything that you do is to still the mind, to slow it down, to take the foot off the gas pedal and put it on the brake pedal. So that means not even watching any more of my videos, not watching the screen. Because, or especially, like, everything on the screen is part of this, keeps the mind, cranks it up, so it keeps going like a watch. You just, every time you watch something on the screen, or you read something, you engage the mind. You generate thought. And the thought process is there to just generate more thought processes because of everything I just said. So as difficult as this is, and contrary to everyone else, that everyone else is doing, this is what must be done. You must be contrarian to everyone and everything that humanity is doing. You must turn away from the screen and learn to still the body and the mind. And then when you're in this extinction state, instead of terror and wanting to jump back into another experience immediately, another manufactured, created realm, which will be the digital realm, you will be in absolute peace. And another part of this, if you're trying to make sense of this within the framework of time, it's not going to make sense, because in the absolute state, if there are thoughts still arising, see, this is another thing in these trips and these near-death experiences, is that there's still thought there, right? They're having this thought, oh my God, I'm alone, I'm so alone, this is it forever, there's just emptiness, emptiness, emptiness. They don't see it as fullness, right? And this again, is this why my theory, if it was taught in schools, if it was taught throughout in families and through generations, there wouldn't be this fear of death, and it wouldn't be viewed upon as nothingness, right? Our conceptualization of nothing is that it's a void, that it's a lack, but it isn't. And it is that perspective that terrifies people when they're in the absolute state. They think that God is something like, is just a perfect person, a perfect human that can change, I don't know what it is. Some sort of magic magician or something that can just change things on a whim. It's not like that at all. It's just perfect contentment, perfect self-fulfillment and self-sustainment. That's what it is. So, again, if there are no thoughts in this state, then there is no time in this state. In the absolute, where there's just one, right? So, time is the separation between events. And if there is no thought separating an event from you, basically, then there is no time, right? No thoughts, basically, equals no time. So the absolute, where there's just one, there's just you, and no content, well, there's no time. And I know it's difficult to understand the state of no time. But where there is no time, there is no concept of infinity. Oh, I'm going to be like this forever, right? Because there's no flow of time. It's just complete beingness. I can't explain this. You have to get there yourself. But there's nothing to fear, but from the ego's perspective of always needing movement, always needing something relative to it to infer its existence, then that is non-existence and a void and nothingness and terror. You do not want to experience this existential terror that most of humanity will when they don't have their crack anymore, when they don't have all of this, it all goes away. You don't understand the level of existential angst that makes people want to have another, like, get right back here, right immediately. But what if there is no more here? What if there is no more human experience to go into? Then you'll panic and you'll go into the digital realm, and then it's the new iteration of just starting off basically from scratch again, exactly where you are now. It's so simple. It's just it's not complicated to understand. It's just very, very, very hard to do and to accept that this is all, that the purpose of this is to escape this. That is not a hard concept to grasp. It's a hard concept to accept. And this is why Elon Musk has 10 million followers and I have 100, right? This is why. Is because it's so difficult, we're so brainwashed to accept this as fundamental reality. So stillness. Move inward. Find that which does not change, which is always the same. The awareness, the quality of the awareness you will find, the more that you get there into the stillness. Of course, zero is just zero, right? You can have, one is always different. Like there's one tree there and there's another tree there, and there's one microphone there, and there's one cat house here, and one speaker here, and right? It's all different, but the zero, the stillness, is always the stillness. That from which all of this arises, that quality, the awareness, the quality of the awareness is unchanging. So it's very simple. Find the space between your thoughts. Pay attention to the space between your thoughts. And if it's peace that you want, then just keep going there. Pay more attention to the space between thoughts than everything else, and it will work. That works. That's how it works. You just shift awareness over and over and over. It's just like moving your sight from one thing to another, except it's your mind's eye. You just shift the awareness to basically that which is shifting the awareness. All right, without being redundant, that's it.